Prometheus. We all think we know the story, right? The Titan, the fire stolen for humanity, the defiance against Zeus, hero stuff.
That's definitely the popular version. But today we're looking at something different.
Right.
We're diving into Kadir Kubashek's work, specifically Prometheus, a divine conspiracy, and his alternative reading.
Okay.
He suggests that this hero image, it might actually be masking a much bigger divine strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe orchestrated by Zeus himself.
So the big question we're exploring, based on Kubashek, is, could Prometheus's famous act have been part of Zeus's plan, not really rebellion?
Exactly. It's quite a counterintuitive idea, isn't it? It really turns the myth inside out.
It does. Okay, so let's unpack this. Kubashek argues ancient myths weren't just stories. They reflected society, order, power.
Precisely. They weren't just random tales. So the idea that Prometheus could just, act completely alone on something this huge, giving fire to mankind.
It seems a bit unlikely within that kind of structured divine world.
That's Kubashek's point. An event that's significant probably wouldn't just happen randomly. He puts forward this hypothesis. What if Prometheus's actions were actually a kind of indirect move by Zeus?
Indirect? How so?
Well, think about the way fire was given. By stealing it, maybe the act itself gave fire a sacred quality. It wasn't just a simple gift.
So it fostered a sense of maybe obligation or dependence in humans.
That's the idea. Different from Zeus just handing it over freely, it sets up a specific dynamic between humans and the divine right from the start.
Okay, interesting. And then there's the punishment, the famous chaining, the eagle. We always see that as the price he paid.
Right, the ultimate consequence of defiance. But Kubashek looks at it differently. He suggests this suffering might have been, well, performative?
Performative? Like a show?
Kind of. A public lesson for humanity. Imagine witnessing that level of torment. It powerfully demonstrates the unchangeable nature of divine power, of Zeus's authority.
So seeing Prometheus suffer would convince people, don't cross the gods.
It would certainly reinforce that idea, wouldn't it? The chains become symbols of obedience. And maybe, paradoxically, Prometheus's very resistance ended up cementing human submission.
Wow. That's a darker interpretation. And how does Pandora fit into this? Kubashuk connects her story too, right? Especially the warning to Epimetheus.
He does. If you view this through the lens of a potential divine strategy, Pandora isn't just a separate incident. The warning, the box, the evils unleashed.
It's another layer of control.
Possibly. It sets up this recurring pattern. Human curiosity leads to breaking rules, which leads to suffering. It's a cycle.
And Kubashuk notes that Pandora, the female figure, is used here.
Yes, instrumentalized, perhaps, alongside Prometheus within this larger divine plan to manage humanity.
Okay, so let's pull this together.
Sure.
Kubashuk's central thesis is basically that this myth we celebrate as being about rebellion and freedom
Might actually be a construct of power, a carefully managed narrative.
Zeus uses Prometheus's act, the punishment, Pandora. It's all indirect, trapping humanity.
Trapping them in a cycle of gratitude for the fire, but also fear. Fear of that divine power they saw punish Prometheus.
So Kubashuk concludes that Prometheus didn't really free humanity.
Not in the way we think. Instead, humans became sort of internalized slaves to this divine order. The myth itself, in this view, becomes a tool reinforcing a kind of manipulated obedience.
A divine conspiracy, punishment as performance, Pandora woven into the plan. It definitely offers a completely different way to look at Prometheus.
It certainly does.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? If that gift, the gift of fire, might have had these hidden strings, what other stories, what other gifts we take for granted might be worth looking at again?
What underlying power dynamics are at play?
Exactly, something to ponder. Thanks for joining this deep dive, exploring a familiar myth through a really challenging new lens.